Okay, so we're going to continue with our dive into Python. So this is the second full lesson where we're learning the various data types of Python. So as usual, we're going to start at the GitHub page and download the notebook for today. And so we're on lesson 6, so we're going to click on lessons. Lesson 6. And as usual, the notebook is rendered here, but we want to download it so we can have a live version that we can make sure everything runs on our own machine. So click on raw and then select that URL, and then you can hit Command C to copy, and then we're going to open up the terminal and going to navigate to our folder for the course SIO 209 slash, again we're going to go to lessons, and we're building up some stuff here. So we're going to do a curl dash capital O, and then we'll type a double quote. You can do a single quote too. Let's try that. It should work. And hit enter. That's going to download that file to this folder. It's 100% completed. And if we type ls again, or my shortcut is just L, my alias, and you can see we have lesson 6 here.
Hey, Luke, is it list everything out instead of showing like the download version that you have? Is there a way to not have it show the raw file? Like I typed that in and hit enter, and rather than showing that like full receipt and everything, I have the entire raw file in my journal.
You typed this command, and it didn't give you the output. Yeah, I'm not sure that your command might be set up differently. We can see if the file will open. So next thing we want to do is source activate Python 3. And then, so this is going to activate this Conda environment. And then we're going to type Jupyter Notebook. You could see that, remember, we have all these things that we can do. So we can type Jupyter. We can start to type Jupyter and then hit Tab, and it will auto-complete because that's the only command on our system that starts with JUP. And then we could type NOT notebook. No, that won't autocomplete, but saves us a little time. We can also start to type the command and then hit the up arrow. And if you followed the settings that we set up the first week, you can type the up arrow, and it will go to the last command in your history that started with JUP. And in all likelihood, that's Jupyter Notebook. So this saves you some time and prevents you from making typos and things like that. So then we hit enter. This will open up the notebook homepage, and the notebooks are always going to be listed at the top here. So we can then click on that lesson 6, and you can see that we now have our notebook here. So the first thing, the first thing that we want to do with this notebook is we want to clear the output. So we're going to go to Cell and then All Output and Clear. And now you'll see that there's no output, and you can see that these cells haven't been executed yet. The advantage of this is that It doesn't affect how you run the code, but as we're going through these, you'll know whether you've executed them or not, and it'll just confirm that everything's working on your machine and you're not just seeing the output from the notebook that was saved on GitHub. Okay, so we don't need the terminal right now. We're just going to focus on the notebook. So this is lesson 6, taking input, reading and writing files, and functions. And this covers Shaw exercises 11 through 26. And if you're following along in the Learning Python book, that's chapters 9 and then 14 through 17. So in Learn Python the Hard Way, in fact, I'm assuming he uses input instead of raw input. Is that correct? Have you guys gone through these yet? So because he updated this for Python 3. Has anyone done these exercises yet? No? Okay. Well, let me know, or I'll check. But there are minor updates from Python 2 to Python 3. But in Python 2, there was a command called raw input. And then in Python 3, it's just called input. But there's a couple different ways that you can get input into a script in Python. Some basic ways are using this input function, which prompts the user to type something. There's also a command or a package or a module, I guess is the proper term, called argv, which takes arguments from the command line that the user also types. This is a little more sophisticated because you don't have to manually type it in every time. You just put it into your command, and then you can use that command over and over again. So with input or raw input, this does work in the Jupyter Notebook, but it's kind of a strange thing to do because you could just modify the cell. But we'll just for completeness, we'll do this. So we execute the first cell, and it gives us a prompt. So in the terminal, it would wait for you to type something. But here it's just waiting for you to type something in the notebook. So we can just hit enter, put a number or something, and then hit enter. But the more common way would be to write the variable equals, this is a variable assignment. So we're assigning the value on the right to the variable name on the left. So this is typical way to enter the value of a variable. So we're storing this integer 6 as this variable y. So there's, as I said, there's this argv module, and it gives you this special variable that's also called argv that allows you to pass strings or numbers or file names into your code. But it's meant to work as a command line argument. So by definition, it doesn't work with Jupyter Notebooks. But there's an easy workaround that we can do. If, let's say, you want to get your code working in the notebook, but then eventually you're going to migrate that over to a Python script. So you can hard code your variables, which is where you specify the value of the variable up front, and you can change it, but it's meant to be just what you set it as. And then you can change those to these arguments, these argv things, and then it will require you to provide them when you execute your Python script. So if we wanted to, we could, once we had our notebook all set, we could go up here to File and say Download as .py, and this would save this whole thing as a text file, a Python script. And you can note that there's a bunch of other export formats here that are all very convenient. You can save it just as the notebook itself, as HTML, as Markdown, and a couple other formats. Uh-huh.
Commands in the Python script, then it means that when you run something high, you can add them afterwards.
Correct.
Is there a way to, like, 'cause I would probably forget what argv 0, 1, 2, and 3 are supposed to be.
Uh-huh.
Is there a way to prompt the user?
Yes. So there's a few different ways to specify what those arguments should be.
Or would I have to use input for that rather than argv?
You're saying you want a prompt that like lets you type it in,
Because I know there's like the argvs, I can put like something.py
and then like file 1, file 2, and then output file or something like that. Yeah. So there's one good way is there's a package called click, and you import that into your script and you provide the information, and it will ask you for what type of argument it is, if it's a variable or a file, a string, and then you can provide a little message that will define, like it will tell the user, what it wants. And then if you don't type the correct number of arguments, let's say you just type Python myscript.py and then hit enter, it will print out what you're supposed to do. Or you can. It also has like help documentation. You can do -- help. So it's kind of a really nice way. But yeah. Okay. So in our notebook, we would just write. We would just enter the values of these variables, hard coded, which is to say they are just straight up defined right in our code. But when we turn this into a Python script, we're going to remove this, like we delete this and we delete this, and that would give us something that looked like this. So now we have to provide these arguments, and argv0 is not actually provided. That's actually the name of the script. So if you're typing Python, the name of the script would be argument 0, and then everything after that would be 1, 2, 3. So this is just a simple way to, in order to specify, then storing those argument elements. Basically, the argv is a list, and you're storing it as a single each element as a single variable. And then there's some other things that we might start a Jupyter notebook with. So in addition to defining, so even if we do have arguments, perhaps we still might want some other things hard coded. But so you might have certain variables, colors, input and output paths perhaps might be hard coded, or they might be taken as arguments. And then you're also gonna import some packages. So we could import pandas and NumPy, for example, and define all these things. Are there any questions about that?